Jacob Dubois was a young man in the prime of his life, silly, compassionate, and engaged to be married to the love of his life, Holly. Late one evening, his friend Ethan Beckman called and asked Jacob to hang out.
Holly stayed up all night waiting for him to return, but he never did. Now, Holly and Jacob's mother, Silvia, are left to piece together what happened that night.
Welcome back to Missing. I am Tim, here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing very, very well, Tim. Of course, I hope everyone out there is doing well, and more than anything, I hope you're doing well.
Thank you very much, Lance. I am doing well, and I'm really excited to speak about this case. We're talking about the disappearance of Jacob Dubois from Schertz, Texas, on March 7th, 2021. This case was submitted to private investigations for the missing, and a researcher named Rachel Oliver put together some research here with the help of our Jennifer Amell. We go over it together in this episode, and we play clips from Jennifer's interview with Jacob's mother, Silvia, and his girlfriend, Holly.
So at the time of his disappearance, he was 22 years old, 5 foot 9 inches, about 157 pounds. He had brown hair, brown eyes, and he was last seen wearing a gray and white short-sleeved shirt, gray sweatpants, and black Nike shoes. And anyone with information is asked to contact the Schertz Police Department at 210-619-1200, or you can click the link to Crime Stoppers in the show notes.
As always, make sure to follow Private Investigations for the Missing on their social media pages. There are links in the show notes for that as well. And check out what they're doing on their website at investigationsforthemissing.org. And Lance, we have an exciting new subscription service to tell our listeners about. It's for this show.
I'm glad you brought that up, Tim, because we've been working on it behind the scenes for a few months now. And while it is true we are moving from Patreon onto Supporting Cast, our new hosting site for the subservice, it's not anything that we're upset about with Patreon. It's not anything like we don't like the way that works. We truly appreciate Patreon, but what we need to do, what we want to do, the content that we want to provide to the people who are signing up for the subservice, we're better equipped to do through Supporting Cast. And I'm talking about things like ad-free episodes where you get to hear very in-depth and provocative theories that we have on the disappearances, on the cold cases. You'll get to hear Tim, myself, and Jen really dig deep into what the possibilities are for this particular cold case or that particular cold case. And it's something we really don't do on the public feed.
And we're also going to do a live Ask Us Anything with me, you, and Jen every month, Lance, and our Tier 2 subscribers. So that is going to be a lot of fun. And you can check this out at missing.supportingcast.fm. And there's a link in the show notes as well. And we also have all of our old creators' commentary episodes, Lance, from the Missing Maura Murray podcast.
Oh, right. Who can forget about that content? What an interesting endeavor we embarked upon back then in 2018, where we listened to the early episodes of Missing Maura Murray. And then with the knowledge that we had and all the information that we had since then, we could go back and do this sort of director commentary over the episode. It was only available on a premium service, and now you can get it through Supporting Cast. And it's informative. It's also hilarious at times. And it's also very, at least personally for me, just a special kind of torture. So you can hear us go through this special kind of torture as we listen to ourselves from years past, the old Tim and Lance, the babes just wandering about the woods. Very entertaining, but also we come in with a lot of new relevant information.
All right, so check that out. Link in the show notes. And Lance, we're going to CrimeCon at the end of April. It's going to be an absolute blast. If you're thinking about going, you can use code Crawlspace, which is one of our other podcasts. Code Crawlspace to get 10% off your standard badge at crimecon.com.
And everybody knows how excited we are to see our listeners in person again, to see all of the other podcasters and all of the other content creators that we've seen so much of over Zoom. We get to see everybody in person. Another thing that I'm excited about is that everybody gets to be introduced to this new company, our new partners, Glassbox. Much like the way they've facilitated our move from Patreon to supporting cast, they are also going to be a significant presence at CrimeCon. There'll be a little area there. You'll see us. You'll see the Glassbox folks, amazing individuals. You'll see all of the shows that are on their network that are at CrimeCon. So have a conversation with them, grab a coffee or a beer with them, and just find out how cutting edge they are and what they're all about.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to follow us on social media at Missing CSM. And welcome back to Missing. Jennifer Amell, how are you today?
Doing pretty well. It's very snowy up here in the great state of Vermont. I'm very excited to talk about this case. It's interesting and sad, and I actually got to sit down with Jacob Dubois' mother and fiance and talk at length about how wonderful Jacob was, and it really kind of bleeds out of the audio, out of the video, how much they really loved Jacob. This is a case that came to private investigations for the missing from Silvia, Jacob's mother. And this research was conducted by a new researcher. Her name is Rachel Oliver. So thank you, Rachel.
And thank you. You mentioned that you had the chance to speak with Silvia, Jacob's mother, and his fiance, Holly, and that must have been really tough to do. So again, thank you for that. And big thank you to PIs for the Missing for even, bringing this to our attention. It's a truly tragic loss of a very unique and individual who had a lot of potential.
Indeed. And Jacob has been missing since March 7th, 2021. So this is a fairly recent case with developments that are really still happening. And Jacob was missing from Schertz, Texas, which is near San Antonio and the New Braunfels area.
And he's clearly a male, aged 22 at the time of his disappearance, 5 foot 9 inches, about 157 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes. Last seen wearing a gray and white short sleeve shirt, gray sweatpants, and black Nike shorts. And right off the top here, anyone with information about Jacob Dubois is asked to contact the Schertz Police Department, and that's SCHERTZ at 210-619-1200, or Crime Stoppers. You can search Jacob Dubois, DUBOIS. And he was last seen wearing a gray and white short sleeve shirt, gray sweatpants, and black Nike shoes.
So Jen, what was it like to conduct this interview with Silvia and Holly?
I would characterize it as pretty bittersweet. These two women are lovely, lovely people. I really enjoyed talking to them and learning more about Jacob. He just seemed like the coolest guy, like so charming and so sweet. You'll listen to them here kind of describe what Jacob was like.
I'm Holly Hook.
And I'm Silvia Dubois. I am Jacob's mom. And we have been missing our loved one since March, technically 7th, and reported by the police by the 8th, and then again on the 9th. Yes, that's my son. Isn't he so handsome?
He's got such luscious hair.
Yes, that he did. And you know what? These two pictures were taken so close, especially this one, right before he disappeared. Because they had taken this
February
picture.
18th, the day of his birthday, when the snowmageddon had happened in Texas.
But Jacob, oh my gosh, sure, like her, the love of my life here. And has left a hole in my heart, but he's just so awesome, outgoing, smiling, especially when he was around her. That smile you see on the picture, it would light up the room because of her. It would. I mean, he loved her so much. He's just very kind to others, was always like trying to see how he can help others, and just he was a good boy. He's a good boy. When he was younger, gonna be honest, just like every teenager, got into his troubled ways, but that what really, really helped a lot was when he met Hallie. It's like the most wonderful 2 years of his life. He was totally changed. She really gave him a lot of things to look forward, to on a daily basis, like waking up in the morning. It was like a big smile on his face because it's like, oh my gosh, I have the love of my life right here. And it was just very happy, very happy. And being, which we can't, I think this is what makes it hard for us, is because he was, for the past 3 years, he was like in heaven, I would say, because he's been, everything was turning around for him. He was looking forward to a future with her. I kept asking him after high school, where are you going to college? Where do you want to go to college? Nah, I don't want to do that. But as soon as she mentioned it to him, and says, no, we got to go to college. We've got to do this. He's like, oh yeah, Mom, we're going to go to college. I'm like, that's what I've been telling you all this time. So, I guess moms don't have the influence that a young lady of persuasion here with a big smile was able to do. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful to her and everything that he looked forward to in his life.
How did you meet Jacob?
So I used to work at Cane's for a little over a year, and I saw him once or twice in like the drive-thru or whatnot, but then we end up initially meeting at our place of establishment at Evo. It's a dine-in movie theater. And he offered to drive me home. And from there on, we just kept hanging out since.
Oh, what did you like about him?
His big ears. He had really big ears, which I thought was just so funny. And I just, but he was goofy. He was so goofy and just always laughing and trying to be the light in people's life, always trying to get people to have fun and joke around and always wanting to do stuff left and right. Super active, so always constantly wanting to go do something different. He kept things going and I was stuck and he got me out of that rut. So.
They were the yin to their yang, I think. They really, really, truly, I feel they complemented each other very well.
That's lovely. You guys were engaged to be married. Did he propose or did you propose?
It was more along the lines of him and it was conversations happening kind of thing. Because I'm not very like a whole showy person and he really is. So it was more like a little secret thing first. We were probably eating a bunch of food all the time. A lot of the times we would record videos of like either taking the first bite or clink, cheersing our food. So like there's a bunch of videos on my phone where it's like cheers or clink, clink. And then it was going to be a video of the entire year of us just like of different foods that we were like clinking together. As far as friends go, we mostly hung out with my best friend. So we would go to like in October, the pumpkin patch and like cut out pumpkin. We would both spend the night at my best friend's house and like we would do a lot of crafts because I love crafting. It's something I really love to do. And so he was always down for anything. So we would like make little trays or spray paint something or paint and mold sculptures, this type of stuff. So we were constantly doing something crafty with my best friend most of the time.
Which is something that caught me off guard when I saw what she was getting him to do. He was sketching again. He had stopped doing that in high school because he took an art class. But then when he got with her, he started sketching little, Disney characters for her. and he sketched a portrait of them two holding onto each other on a canvas.
He took my graduation picture, and just by looking at the picture, he recreated it on this gigantic canvas. And I was like, what the? I didn't even know you could draw. Like, it was crazy. I was like, and so he was constantly drawing something new every day. Like when I was at work and he was at home, he would be like drawing and stuff.
Is it hard to relive memories with Jacob, or do you find some comfort in remembering the good times?
A mixture of both.
We want him to be here. You know, that's the hardest part is we want him to be here with us.
Might I say, it always impresses me when we cover stories of individuals who are in their early 20s, and the description that people give of them who are close to them is they're compassionate, they never give up on their friends, they're responsible, mature, they were driven. Because I always think of myself in my early 20s, and I don't know if anyone would ever describe me like that. There's some parts of my 20s that I don't remember or something, and just to hear this is, I guess it's motivational. I guess it's inspirational to me.
Yeah, Jacob had a really good head on his shoulders. I know he was struggling a bit after graduating high school. His mom was saying, she was trying to encourage him to apply to college and figure out what he was going to do with the rest of his life. But it wasn't until he met Holly that he was like, I got to get things on track. I got to go to college. I got to get a career and, marry this woman. So it seemed like she was a great impetus in his life.
So now to the details of Jacob's disappearance. Jacob went missing on Sunday, March 7th after 11:30 p.m. in Schertz, Texas, after Ethan Beckman, 20 years old, picked him up from his home where he was with his girlfriend, Holly Hook.
And Jacob and Ethan, they went to school together over the years and were friends in the past, but I guess reportedly Ethan had some personal problems that caused Jacob to take a step back from their friendship, I guess recently. And Jen, they elaborate on this a little bit in the upcoming clip, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a complicated friendship between Jacob and Ethan. I don't know if Jacob particularly enjoyed Ethan. He felt a little sorry for him, and he was the type of person who would never give up on a friend either. So he saw Ethan going through a really hard time, and you'll hear his fiancée Holly talk about that.
How would you characterize the friendship between Jacob and Ethan? Can you call it a friendship?
It was kind of like, if I have to, or if you bribe me kind of thing, kind of a friendship on Jacob's end. For Ethan, I would believe it's like, it seemed like in my eyes, he was obsessed with Jacob, because nights that we would have to work, we'd be in bed, ready to go to bed about 10:30. Ethan would randomly pull up here and be like, I'm outside your house, come outside. Almost on a nightly basis. And I'm like, you got to stop that. That is scary. That is creepy. I don't like that. He'd pull up, and sometimes Jacob wouldn't even be home, and it's just me. It's like 8 a.m. and he's calling Jacob's phone, and Jacob's knocked out. He is a heavy sleeper. And I'm like, why is this guy? I'll hang up the phone right away. I'm like, you woke me up. I'm going back to sleep. And then he'll call my phone. And I'm like, we're sleeping. Oh, well, can you just let him know I called him whenever he went? Yeah. Hangs up the phone. Like, he wanted him he wanted to be around him all the time. Like, it was crazy.
And Holly said Jacob left late at night to go hang out with Ethan. And here's a clip.
Was there anyone in his life that was like problematic or was mad at him for any reason?
All of his friends had their issues, whether it was mental or physical or just emotional, which, I mean, that's people in general, that's life. Some more than others. He had a best friend at one point, which Jacob refuses to give up on people, refuses. He wants to be there for you no matter what you do. But it got to the point where he couldn't anymore because it was putting his life in danger too. And so he completely cut him off. And I wasn't even allowed to meet him. That's how much he was like, I don't want any contact with him. I don't want you meeting him, X, Y, and Z. I would see him call his phone, and he would just let go. And as far as that goes, that's the only person besides, obviously, the friend who's in jail at the moment that would have any disregard for him or harm. I was waiting for Jake to get home because we had known since he went missing on Sunday. We had known since that Friday that I was going to get some bad news from my mother. I didn't know what it was, but I had two guesses, and my younger siblings knew. And so when I put down the two guesses, they stopped texting my brother and I back. So I already knew what it was without knowing what it was. I got the information. He had dropped me off at my mom's house. We got told. I come back home. We're waiting for him to get home. And he comes home and I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, hey, like, what's up? How was your day? Before we even jump into any of that. And as I'm like trying to make him food or whatever, he tells me that Ethan, there's something wrong with Ethan and he really wants to see me right now. And I told him I would. And I was like, did you forget that we had already planned to talk and sit down about whatever, everything happened? He's like, I thought we already talked about it, because I guess he read the messages wrong and thought it was about something else and not what it was. And I was like, no. And I'm not the girl who's like, you can't hang out with your friends. You have to stay home. I refuse. So I was upset. I go upstairs. I turn my TV show back on, and I'm just laying in the bed, and the room's pitch black. And he comes in. He was like, I don't have to go if you don't want me to. And I was like, I'm not going to tell you not to go. That's not who I am. Whatever, XYZ. If you want to go, then go. But I'm not going to tell you what to do. And so he was like, well, I promise I'll only go for 20 minutes. I was like, I'm not saying you have to do that. Like, if you want to go for longer, you can go for longer. He's like, okay, I promise we'll try to be 20 minutes. If not, no more than 2 hours. Because Ethan had a habit of manipulating him into, like, if he didn't want to hang out, he'd finally convince him to hang out, and then like would lie about what they were going to do, or having stuff that they already needed to hang out or whatever. And then taking him for 3 hours, 4 hours, and be like, whenever he got in the car and he's like, oh, well, I don't have this, or I need to go get this, XYZ, and taking him like for hours. So he was like, no more than 2 hours. So I was upset. So I said bye or whatever, and he left. I had this worst feeling in my stomach, and it was 11:35 at night whenever he left. I waited till 1. He still wasn't home, and I was like, you know what? Let me just stay up and see how late he's actually going to be. And then it got to 3 a.m. and I was mad. I was angry. And I was like, seriously? Like, I have his location. I had all his passwords, everything, XYZ. I never used them, but whatever. So with Apple iPhone, if you check somebody's location, sometimes it says no connection, but you have to refresh it and then the thing comes up, like the actual location. So when I checked it, it said no location, no connection found or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. I went to sleep. And I'm a light sleeper. So if you open the door, I wake up. If you get in the bed, I wake up. 2 hours went by. I woke up. He still wasn't in the room. And I was like, okay, like, I don't like this. So it's 5 a.m. at this point. I'm like, I don't like this at all. Something's wrong. I go back to sleep. And 2 hours later, he's still not home. So at this point, I'm hoping that he just got drunk and he stayed at his house. I finally got back up at 7:30 and I stayed awake until 10 a.m. because I thought that was a reasonable hour to go to somebody's house and bang on their door. And so I texted her as soon as it was a reasonable hour. I was like, hey, Jacob didn't come home last night. So she came, she picked me up. At this point in time, we're thinking, these bozos probably got arrested, So we're calling jails, the hospitals, XYZ as we're driving to Ethan's house. We get into Ethan's community and I see Ethan's car. The first thing I do is I go look at his car because the front bumper of his car is missing. And I thought that was weird to begin with. I look inside his car. I don't see anything. All I see is like keys, like spare keys just chilling on the seat, which was weird because Ethan had a gigantic amount of keys on one keychain and Jacob kept loose keys. And so I was like, okay, whatever. So I bang on Ethan's door for 5 minutes. No answer. Nobody comes to the door. We're low on gas. So we drive 5 minutes down the road. We come back and Ethan's car is gone. And he's just like, okay, well, I'm going to give Ethan a call and see what's up. And I'm like, okay. Gets in the car. He calls Ethan. And then all of a sudden we start seeing him laughing in the car. And we're just like, what? Like, what? Gets out the car. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Gets out the car and he's like, well, I just spoke to Ethan and he said that they got high as shit in the back of the neighborhood or whatever. And he was like, what did he say? And then that he drove off before he while Jacob was walking home. And I was like, okay, but why are you laughing? He was like, I just got to seem like I'm on, like, it's not that serious. I'm in a playful manner with him, so he's not like, defensive. And then I was like, okay. He didn't write down any other information besides Jacob's name, Ethan's name, Ethan's number. I said, he was like, but to be honest with you, they're probably not going to take this seriously. I would wait like 3 days or so to file another report because he is a 22-year-old male. Cases like this all the time, they end up just running away, running out, like just leaving. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what 22-year-old man leaves his PlayStation, his mom's car, his doesn't take a bag of clothes, his toothbrush, stuff like that, especially not a PlayStation. Like seriously.
So by 7 a.m. the next morning, Jacob still wasn't home. And after promising that he would not be gone for more than 2 hours, the following day when Holly spoke to Ethan, he told her that they went to a construction area in the back of the neighborhood. And here's Holly describing how that didn't really make too much sense.
We went down there and we looked at people's cameras. There was not a car around that time that Ethan said that they went back there. So we knew he was lying already. What he told us was a lie.
My son is not the type who just gets up and goes without saying, hey, I'm stuck over here with no gas, or I'll be home late, or he always communicates something.
The thing that was off is that every single time he was with Ethan, he would constantly text me. Constantly. The thing that was off about that night is he did not text me not once the entire time. I knew something was wrong when he left. I knew something was wrong when he was gone. I knew. I had a gut feeling.
And then Holly filed a missing persons report on Monday, March 8th, after she was unable to get in touch with Jacob and unable to communicate with Ethan regarding Jacob's whereabouts.
I think some of the details on this really stand out to me because recently we've covered disappearances where it's been like several days or a week where somebody disappears before anybody files a missing person report. Again, I'm impressed at the like being in your early 20s and being so responsible. That missing person report was filed the next day by Holly, and they just start immediately looking for him. There was no downtime. It was like he was gone longer than he should have been. Something's wrong. Like they had this, I guess, sixth sense or intuition that something was not right here.
Yeah, that's totally true. And it really speaks to how assertive Holly and Silvia and Jacob's family were in this matter. Like, they took it super seriously really quickly. And I think like off mic in our interview together, they kind of said, we wish that we would have been more assertive with the investigation. Maybe it would have happened differently, or, as we get into the story, maybe some of those things wouldn't have been so messy had they been more assertive. But I think one never knows what to do when someone goes missing. It's not like you prepare for something like this. And I think Holly in particular acted exactly how she should have. She was worried. She alerted, Silvia, and then she went to the police.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes it's just really frustrating to hear about that time in between where a family member knows there's something wrong with their loved one. They don't go missing like this, and then they can't file the police report yet, or the investigation isn't really thrust into action for several days. And it's just a tough period of time.
And it's tragic on many levels here. She's second guessing her actions in the hours after the disappearance. And, if they had been more assertive, that could have turned the law enforcement against them. They were being too aggressive. So I guess it really doesn't matter what you do as long as you do something as soon as possible, because you're always going to second guess what you've done. You're always going to say, could I have done better? But I will say, I think this is a good teachable moment for everybody. Like, the worst that'll happen if you think something is wrong and you contact the authorities, if someone's not around for a few hours for a day and you are afraid that you're looking like you're being an alarmist by contacting somebody, the worst that'll happen is people will say you overreacted. and it all worked out in the end. That's the worst that'll happen. So waiting a long period of time, just again, I feel like this is a teachable moment for people out there. It doesn't do any good. It only increases anxiety, and it only adds to the length of time that could have been used investigating the disappearance.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You should always raise the alarm if you feel something is wrong in your gut. But I think what Holly was referring to was during the course of the investigation. It's like once she had alerted to the police what had happened and she gave all the information, they kind of sat on it. They didn't do much. They didn't go after Ethan. They barely talked to him. And I think what she was referring to was wishing that she had pushed more during that time period. But I think what it comes down to is that Silvia and Holly just trusted the police to do their job. And they didn't know that they had to be on top of them, every hour, trying to get them to go out and interview the person who last saw Jacob.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. On the morning of March 8th, Holly and Jacob's mother, Silvia, drove to Ethan's home in search of Jacob. Ethan's 2019 Volkswagen Jetta was parked at the home when they arrived. There was no answer at the front door and no answer to texts or calls. Silvia and Holly had to leave Ethan's briefly to put gas in the car before returning back to Ethan's home shortly after.
Yeah, and when they returned back after a few minutes to get that gas, they returned back to Ethan's home, and his Jetta is no longer parked in the driveway. It's gone. They don't know where he went. And Holly calls Ethan and Jacob's phone repeatedly, and both are switched off.
Highly suspicious behavior. Obviously, if his car was there, it's likely that he might have been there, especially when the car is missing only a few minutes later. It sounds like he was definitely there hearing those knocks. So it's very frustrating.
But later in the day, on the 8th, Ethan finally does respond to Holly via text message and tells her he was just getting food, explaining why he didn't answer the door. Holly continues to ask Ethan where Jacob is. This is all through text messages. And she also tells Ethan she's about to file a missing person report for Jacob. And what was Ethan's reaction to Holly telling him that?
Well, Holly reported that Ethan got angry and defensive and suggested a couple of different stories and reasons why Jacob was missing, including alleging he was cheating but couldn't actually back up any of his claims to both police and or Silvia or Holly.
Well, that's kind of scummy. I mean, even if your friendship isn't the best, even if it's sort of deteriorating, I mean, who does that? Who will just make accusations like that? There's no evidence. It just seemed weak and empty.
Yeah, you can definitely tell by this next clip that Ethan was scrambling to say something to explain away where Jacob was and why he wasn't answering her. It's very confusing what he tries to say. And I think by saying oh, he's cheating on you anyway, was trying to get Holly off the chase, right? To get her angry with Jacob so she wouldn't look into where he was.
And this is something he told the police as well, right?
I don't know if he told police about the cheating thing. I think that was just to Holly. But he definitely told many stories to police that didn't make any sense.
He would tell us different stories, XYZ, well, I didn't drop him off. I went to go drive him to that girl's house. So where is it? I don't know. I don't know San Antonio like that. That man can drive San Antonio without a GPS. We know he's lying. I was okay, so what highway did you take? You dropped him off at a gas station now? Okay, so which gas station was it? I was constantly asking questions, and he didn't like that. And he kept stuttering, switching stuff up. He couldn't keep the same story.
And get this, we later find out on that same day when Ethan left his home while Holly and Silvia refilled their car with gas, Ethan actually wrecked his car and hit public property and fled the scene. And this resulted in, quote, considerable damage, end quote.
Yeah, I saw a picture of Ethan's car, and it's not his car wasn't totaled. I think he may have hit a telephone pole, but the entire bumper and front grille was dented. The bumper was falling off. So it was a significant accident. And I'm not sure if this was purposeful. I don't know if there was evidence to hide or he had been in another crash. I don't think they reported seeing any damage to that car when they first pulled up to Ethan's house. Or it could speak to Ethan's state of mind. If he's just kind of like frantic, driving around, completely distracted, that could be a reason why, or inebriated too. That could be a reason why he crashed.
But I guess Ethan was able to at least drive that car enough to park it at a location that was just north of town, and then he started using rideshare apps to make multiple trips to Walmart. Is that right?
Yeah, this is some really odd behavior, especially in the time that he left his house, took his Jetta, and crashed it. I have to say, he's acting very strangely, frantic behavior, maybe even. What was he purchasing at Walmart?
Yeah, so during these trips to Walmart, Ethan purchased Drano, paper towels, bleach, and lighter fluid. There's a couple other items that are redacted here because they're not entirely public knowledge at this point, but some of these items were actually visible in the car per the responding officer's body cam footage when the car was found disabled.
I mean, that's some pretty telling information there. Drano, bleach, lighter fluid. Did he have a history? I know that he had some issues, but did he have a history of acting like erratic like this, like manic like this? Because it feels very manic to me.
I don't know much about Ethan's life before this event, but from Holly's characterization, he just seems to be a troubled guy. She mentioned that he was harming animals too, which we, as true crime people, kind of associate with serial killers now at this point.
Chapter 1 of the Going to Be a Serial Killer handbook.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speculate that he's harmed other people or whatever, but it does seem that Ethan is just a troubled dude. Silvia actually weighs in on her thoughts. After learning all this information, she speaks about like what she kind of feels in her heart happened.
In our hearts, we knew it was him. We know it's him. We know he did something to Jacob, but there was no evidence that would have been found if we wouldn't have kept going after him. You know, I am religious. I believe, that God intervened. Because he wanted to make sure that we found something on him. That's my belief, because if we had not gone to go looking for Jacob and would have left it as they're still out partying or something, and we'll just wait till he gets home. This kid would have had enough time to do everything. And apparently he did, because he went and bought Drano, bleach, lighter fluid. He wouldn't have been able to get away from all of that stuff. It just makes me so mad that they didn't listen to us right there and then when we told them, this is the kid, go to his house right now. If they would have gone right there and then when we told them and what we felt was wrong, it wouldn't have never gotten to this point.
And those redacted items are very suspicious. And according to the San Antonio Express, Schertz detective Helen Lafitte said Beckman bought several items that could be used to dispose of or destroy a body, end quote. So I have to imagine some of those items were in the redacted pile there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's amazing that the Schertz detectives are not even playing coy about this. They're like, yeah, these could definitely be used to dispose of a body.
It's a great point that you raised about the redacted items. I mean, they didn't redact bleach and lighter fluid. I can't imagine what was redacted that would cause law enforcement to publicly say that this can destroy a body. That's pretty telling. Well, to continue the pace of their private search for Jacob, Silvia files a second missing person report on Tuesday, March 9th. And on the same day, Bexar County deputies made contact with Ethan after his damaged vehicle was found disabled near the highway US 281 and Borgfeld Road.
And on Wednesday, March 10th, Ethan's vehicle was towed to his mother's business. Detectives spoke to Ethan once again, and he gave conflicting stories as to how long they spent together and where he dropped Jacob off the night of the 7th.
And then by Thursday, March 11th, detectives obtained a search warrant and seized Ethan's damaged car, that Volkswagen Jetta. They observed that it was power washed inside and out, parked and covered with a tarp. The floorboards were, quote, soaking wet. And shortly after this discovery, Jacob's missing persons investigation turned into an actual murder investigation when detectives were able to locate blood on one of the seats of Ethan's car.
What a gut-wrenching moment. Again, like the pace of this has been something's happening every day, and a week doesn't even go by, and it turns into a murder investigation. Also, just so sloppy. Like power washing the inside of your car. Like, no one does that. I mean, you're just giving yourself away.
And on Friday, March 12th, a warrant was issued for Ethan Beckman's arrest for tampering with or fabricating physical evidence, which is a third-degree felony.
Unfortunately, 9 days pass and Ethan Beckman was unable to be located by authorities. And we're talking the time period of March 12th to the 21st.
Yeah, and now comes the craziest part, in my opinion, in this kind of investigation saga, because Silvia and her sister were the ones to discover that Ethan Beckman had fled the country.
3:00 in the morning, my sister-in-law calls us and she says, I couldn't sleep. And I was just like Googling Ethan Beckman. And it came out a news article or a magazine article from Milano newspaper in Mexico. Tell me, Joel, this is my husband's name, is this the boy you're looking for? And he woke me up and we're like looking. I said, yes, that is him. That's him. She says, they have him in Mexico. And I called the detectives the next day and I told them, did you all know he's over there? And I said, well, I don't know. I called them Sunday to let the detectives know. And then Monday, I waited and waited. 10:00 in the morning, I went to their office and I said, okay, so tell me what's going on. Y'all got him now? You know where he's at? And he's like, who? I said, Ethan, he's in Mexico, right? You know he's in Mexico? No, we didn't know.
What?
I said, what? I said, where did you see that? Maybe it's fabricated. And I said, well, I don't have my phone on me. I'm not going to. I said, don't you have a phone? Can't you just Google Ethan Beckman and boom, he'll show up? And he goes, no, we were not aware of it. I'm like, so I'll have to get my people to look into it. That is so sad, isn't it?
And on March 22nd, the Strategic Deployment Unit's agents carried out an operation at the La Sila Hotel in the Sarabia neighborhood. And they apprehended Ethan Beckman after proving that he didn't speak Spanish. And an immigration office discovered a warrant for him out of Texas, and he was detained.
Again, how sloppy is that? You flee to a Spanish-speaking country and you can't speak Spanish. I mean, you're done.
Yeah, you can't even pretend good enough.
Yeah. And to add to the frustration, Beckman's mother was also arrested, accused of hindering the investigation and hiding Beckman from authorities. So was she the person who said, you need to go to Mexico?
I mean, it seems that way. I think she aided and abetted, in a way, her son, which that must be like the most difficult situation ever. I feel like you'd like to think that you would speak to Jacob's mother, Silvia, and be like, I'm so sorry for what it seems like my son did. We'll try to get justice. But from a mother's perspective, you're going to protect your child. So I think she chose her child over the moral thing to do in this situation.
Yeah, I get that instinct, but I'll tell you, nothing drives me crazier when we cover these cases than when something like that happens and a parent covers for the kid. As a parent, no, it is not a hard decision. Sorry, kids.
Really? You'd let your kids go to jail?
Yes, if they murdered someone or if they, yes.
I don't know what I would do. I don't have kids. I feel like that would be hard.
Also, can I just, I don't know why I'm hyper-focused on just the sloppiness of this. After power washing the interior of the car, they still found blood. It's incredible to me.
And that blood that the investigators found actually launched this into an ongoing murder investigation. So whether it was Jacob's or not, I guess we don't know, but you can kind of read between the lines.
Yeah, you certainly can. I don't think we can confirm that it is Jacob's blood, but it definitely spurred the investigation further.
And Ethan was booked into the Guadalupe County Jail in Texas on March 29th, not for murder, but for a third-degree felony of tampering with evidence. So to be clear, he's in custody, not for the murder of Jacob.
Yeah, and Holly and Silvia go on to say how important it is to get more information about Ethan's movements that night and the day following Jacob's disappearance.
We are trying to find somebody, anybody who has maybe seen, and I don't know if we can post or share a picture of the guy, but if you go on the Guadalupe County Jail website and type up his name is Ethan Beckman. It's public record. You'll see a picture of him. Even on the Crime Stoppers website, has a picture of my son and the picture of the person who was suspected of murdering my son. What I want is anybody who's either seen him or her in the area looking suspicious, acting suspicion in an area where they don't belong, because they're from here in Schertz. But if they're out in the countries, the countryside, what are they doing out there?
Okay, and I just want to stress about any eyewitnesses, anyone who saw anything that night, please turn over your information, whether you think it may be important or not. If you saw that Jetta, if you saw Jacob, Ethan, or anything suspicious that night in that area, please turn over your information, because I would think there's definitely at least one eyewitness to, seeing some of the movements, but it appears those eyewitnesses haven't come forward yet, or maybe they don't even know what they saw was interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And back to the don't worry about being an alarmist. Raise that antenna, like sound that alarm. That is, again, the worst thing that'll happen is you'll not hear anything back with your information. You can submit it anonymously. And Jen, great work again on speaking with the family about this. It's one thing for us to say something like that, but it's another thing to hear the mother, stress that and almost beg for it, because it is that important.
They definitely have their priorities in order with this case. They kind of know in their hearts what happened to Jacob. Obviously, they want to bring Jacob home in some way.
So as of December of 2021, the family was told that law enforcement was at step 3 out of 10 in this process, and they were told it can take up to 9 months for the DNA to come back from the lab, which is interesting to hear, I guess, because we've seen the processing of DNA happen in weeks, sometimes a couple of days, based on what priority level it's at.
Right. Yeah, we've also seen some states take years to do testing, though, because it's just waiting in queues. So this is obviously a certain level of priority, but it's not like they're Othram. It's not like the Texas State Lab is Othram, and they can just do it in a snap.
Yeah, and I think in terms of priority, their suspect is in custody. He's not out there potentially committing other murders. So they're just looking for that concrete evidence that will make this a slam dunk case.
And the family was able to raise the Crime Stoppers reward to $10,000 from $5,000 as of January 2022. So really well done. And there is a GoFundMe that is run by Silvia Dubois, so you can check that out. There's a link in the show notes, or you can just search GoFundMe Justice for Jacob.
So once again, great work to Rachel Oliver, who put this research together. Great work, Jen, on interviewing the family and working with Private Investigations for the Missing to bring this to our attention. Again, if anybody has any information, you are urged to contact the Schertz Police Department at 210-619-1200, or searching Crime Stoppers Jacob Dubois, Dubois.
The most important thing is I want to find my son. I want to find my son. I have every reason to believe with everything, details that they've been telling us with the court hearings and meeting with the detectives, that my son is no longer with us, but I do want to put him to rest if that is the case. So if anybody can help us solve this mystery, we would be very grateful to it. And like I mentioned before, we do have a Crime Stoppers up with a reward for him, $5,000. And we did create a GoFundMe to try to raise that, at least double it, to $10,000. So if anybody's interested, that's what we're going to be doing. If you know any information, just know that as soon as the money is available, we're going to give it to the Crime Stoppers so that they can put the reward up to $10,000. Another thing that we're also trying to do, and since Jacob's disappeared, is this is Jacob's torch. I don't know that you can see it very well. I created this little project to try to honor my son while he's missing, because my son would, if you needed something, he would help you. I think you should carry Jacob's torch and pay it forward and do something kind for somebody. And then I said, not just you, I think that's something that we need to do. We need to do something for Jacob. And we created some t-shirts that says Jacob's torch. And that's how we're going to honor him until we find him. We're going to help others with that torch.
I have a final question for you guys. How would you characterize the relationship between yourselves? It's like Jacob brought you guys together, and now what is it like between the two of you?
And she's still my mother-in-law.
And she's still my daughter-in-law. I just love her so much. I could never thank her enough for the happiness that she brought to my son's life. I just not enough to pay her back for that. And it just makes me happy to know that if at any time that my son had to leave this world, I'm so glad he left it when he was so happy in his life. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't on a bad note, like he was miserable or just just not feeling good or didn't have a good love in his life. And that's the love of his life. And she will always be the love of my life too.